Hello everyone, this is going to be an analysis of some interviews that Dr. Ravi gave with Paul Brand. So the sources I've used here is Babies Could Have Been Saved, which is from 18th of August 2023, Doctor Who Helped, 21st of August 2023, and these are YouTube videos that I've used to get the content of these statements. So I'll read out the first one and then we're going to analyse it. What was it like when baby started dying and you couldn't understand why? I've been a paediatrician since 1992 and I had never in my career seen anything like this. And actually initially there was a feeling of thank goodness Lucy was on because she's really good in a crisis. She's really good at managing these things. But as time progressed, the thoughts started springing into our heads, could she be doing something deliberately? Next question. So the thought starts sinking in that there could be a killer. Sorry, I'm trying to get the right angle. On the unit. I mean, that's a big moment. It's a big moment and it's a chilling moment. I don't think anybody has a rule book for how you deal with a situation where you're suspecting that somebody's causing deliberate harm to babies on your neonatal unit. Right, next bit. Right, so there's some chat going on and then continues with the interview. Something happened which made Dr. Jairam even more certain of his own theory. And I've noted, please look at Dr. Jairam's face here. He's got a very interesting facial expression at this point. We don't know what he's just said before, but the point they've edited it from is interesting to see. Sorry for giggling, Doctor. Tell me about the night when you walked in on Lucy Letby standing over the cot of baby K. That is a night that is etched on my memory and will be in my nightmares forever, to be honest. I was sitting at the desk, just outside the room, writing notes. And the nurse looking after the baby said she was popping to the delivery suite to go and talk to the parents, and she said, I've left Lucy and they're babysitting. Part of me was saying, you better go in and just check everything's okay because you know what's happened before when Lucy's been on duty. As I walked towards the incubator, I could see on the monitors that the oxygen saturations, which is basically the baby's oxygen levels, were dropping. And they dropped to a level that ordinarily, number one, the alarms would have been going off, but number two, the nurse would have called for help. And Lucy Letby was standing by the top of the incubator. She didn't have a hand in the incubator. What was she doing then? Well, she was just standing there. Now, tubes become dislodged. But this was a 25-week gestation baby who wasn't kicking around, who wasn't vigorous. The only possibility was that that tube had to have been dislodged deliberately. Right, so then ask them more chat and then he continues with the interview. The very first thing that Tony Chambers, the chief executive, said to us, he cogitated for a few seconds and he said, well, I can see how that might be a very convenient explanation for things. And what that says to me is that he'd already decided that wasn't going on. And this was us just trying to cover up. He was trying to blame you, in other words. I think so. He didn't say it explicitly then. We discussed having CCTV put on the unit. We discussed her being supervised one-to-one with somebody watching her all the time. And the last bit of this interview, it must have been, trying to get a good angle. It must have been an absolutely surreal experience to be sat across the table in that mediation session from somebody who at this point you're quite sure could well be a killer. Yes, it was bizarre. And of course, to listen to her saying, I'm coming back next week, will you work with me? And of course, I was having to say, well, if the trust have deemed that you're coming back to work, I will work with you. Yes, but will you be happy to work with me? I will work with you if you're on shift, because no, I wasn't happy. Another bit, the very fact that the police, after listening to us for less than 10 minutes, realised that this was something that they had to be involved with. Sorry, it was actually, this is something, but I've written that wrong. Involved with, to me, speaks volumes. And I could have punched the air. Do you think the lives of some of those babies could have been saved if management had taken action sooner? It's a horrible thing to say, but I do genuinely believe that there are 4 or 5 babies who could be going to school now who aren't. Right, so that's our first interview. Babies could have been saved. The second one I have written in my notebook. Oops, daisy. So let's just read this one out because I think it'll be useful to look at it. This is the second interview. Peter Hyatt, who's sadly passed away, a very good-hearted statement analyst who I use as inspiration, said that the second interview can often be very even more revealing than the first. So let's read this one out. So again, this is with Paul Brand. I didn't write the questions, so I've only got the answers here, Dr. Ravi Jairam's answers. It is absolutely correct that she's put in prison for life without any chance of release for the crimes that she's committed. But it doesn't change the fact that the parents of these babies and their families will never get back what's been taken away from them. And it's made me angry that she hasn't had the courage to be there to face up to them. There have been opportunities for those people who are at the top of the Countess of Chester to be able to put their hands up and admit that they got it wrong, and this is what's incensed me more than anything. They are still trying to find reasons why what they did was the right thing. You know, for example, one of them said, "Oh, well, we weren't loud enough in expressing our concerns. How much louder could we be? We were loud enough for you to try and vilify us and smear us and drive some of us to the point of applying for jobs in other hospitals. If there is a dodgy doctor or a dodgy nurse, there is a means for them to be found out and sanctioned. As far as I can tell, for people in senior NHS management positions, there is no robust system of accountability or appraisal. This is the culture in the NHS, and it has to change. There have been other inquiries into NHS scandals, which have been statutory full public inquiries. Sorry, I spelled that wrong first time round. I think it's inquiries. Why on earth would this be announced as a non-statutory inquiry? And then Paul Brand answers the question. He sort of quickly interrupts and tells him the answer of why it's been announced as a non-statutory inquiry, which is that I think he said the Prime Minister thinks this will be faster. Is the priority speed? Again, this doctor jumps very quickly back into it. Is the priority speed? I would much rather have an inquiry that asked the right questions and took as much time as it needed to get the right answers. Right, this is my favourite part now. Very interesting. So, Paul Brand asked Dr. Ravi Jairam if he thinks... he tells him that he's considered a hero by the parents and the police. And Dr. Ravi Jairam says, "I'm not a hero, Paul. I was just doing my job." And his voice is quite interesting on that part if you want to go and listen to it. "It's my job to look after babies and children. If any meaningful change about how the NHS reacts and responds to serious and even relatively minor patient safety concerns changes as a consequence of all of this, then I might possibly consider that I've done something heroic. Right now, I just think that I've done what I should have done." Okay, so that's what we're going to be working with. So let's start here. Now you'll notice my voice slow down a lot because I can't speak quickly when I'm actually doing original speech. Okay, so what was it like when babies started dying and you couldn't understand why? So first of all, we've got his pronouns, which are here in the first part of this statement. So very strong credibility, I, and then I again. I've been a paediatrician since 1992, and I had never in my career seen anything like this. What I mean by credibility is that he is in this part of the statement. So he, how can I explain it? It's a stronger way of saying it than if someone misses out the pronoun, because he's present in his own sentence. So, like someone can skip their pronoun and just say, been a paediatrician since 1992, but he doesn't do that. He's definitely here at this point. I've been a paediatrician since 1992, and I had never in my career seen anything like this. So the question was, what was it like when babies started dying and you couldn't understand why? He's answering it with a bit of building credibility. I think I made a note here. Establishing credibility and absolutes. So I've been a paediatrician since 1992. Is this a rehearsed answer, perhaps? I had never in my career. So there's a time, I want to talk about the theme of time during this analysis. He's talking about the length of time that he's been a paediatrician. Now, he's never in my, I had never in my career seen anything like this. So never is actually a red flag in statement analysis, because the way that we use never, even though it means not at any time ever, it can be used in deception, because it's not as, like if you imagine a child and then you say like, did you steal that bike? No, I never. It's kind of like the way that we actually use the word never, it doesn't actually mean the literal meaning. And it's a convincing word. So I had never in my career, so he's like emphasising that period of time, seen anything like this. So his answer, in my interpretation of what was it like when babies started dying and you couldn't understand why, is to call it this. He's not actually given any other description of what it was like. And actually, initially, there was a feeling of thank goodness Lucy was on. Initially is quite a formal word. He does tend to use some formal words. So it is an interview, so it is a formal conversation. However, using formal language can indicate tension and a desire to try to persuade somebody that we're telling the truth. There was a feeling. So this is quite an abstract way of describing it. Beside the fact that it's not a feeling, thank goodness Lucy was on. Like who had this feeling? There was a feeling of thank goodness. So that's not a feeling, and I don't think he recognises the difference between thoughts and feelings. There was a feeling of thank goodness Lucy was on because, right, so he's going to explain the reason for something. So that's kind of a defensive way of speaking, because if you want to use the word because, then you're giving it a reason that you haven't been asked for that reason. So it's not as if someone said to him, why were you... Oh, by the way, that reminds me, when he said never, the exception can be like if Paul Brand had said to him, had you ever seen something like this? And he said, I'd never seen something like this, then that wouldn't be a red marker of deception, because it's, that pattern is being used ever and never. So now back to because, it's sort of like asking for a reason which wasn't requested in the first place. Why was there a feeling of thank goodness Lucy was on? Well, that's because, nobody asked him that. So because she's really good in a crisis, she's really good at managing these things. He's in the present tense now, so I'm going to say this is what he actually believes about Lucy. She's really good. She's really good. So reality, and good at her job, good as a person. I'm going to just put those ideas into this, that I think maybe that's his actual understanding of who Lucy is and what she is like, because she's really good. He's in the present tense, so I think he still feels this way. Just have a sip of water. She's really good at managing these things. So far we've got this and things. But as time progressed, the reason I've circled but is signifying that whatever comes after that word of but is more important to the speaker than what came before it. That's one way of understanding the use of the word but in people's speech. So the part of language that he uses before he says but can be seen as extra information and or managing the audience or managing perception of what he's about to say, which is quite probably relevant in this because, you know, what was it like when babies started dying? You couldn't understand why. I've been a paediatrician since 1992. You know, what's that? That's a very indirect way of beginning a very direct question. So perhaps trying to show why we should believe him, or why all this time has passed where he's apparently never seen anything like this, even though he doesn't say what this is. But as time progressed, so the part after the but is what he actually wants to get across, according to that theory and statement analysis. As time progressed, we've got a very formal word here again, which I think is, I would have probably said as time went on, you know, if I was speaking. The thoughts started springing into our heads. Could she be doing something deliberately? So, but as time progressed, the thoughts. So these thoughts already exist, according to this. The thoughts. It's not as if, I mean, I would have thought a natural way of saying that would be thoughts started. So these are specific thoughts that are already in existence, according to the way he's used wording here. The thoughts started springing. So they started. So there's not like a beginning and an end point of that, really, I don't think. Started springing. Such a positive word. And interesting choice of word here, because it seems to me that he's absolutely delighted about these thoughts. The thoughts started springing into our heads. Could she be doing something deliberately? I'll come on to this in a second, the last sentence. But the thoughts started springing into our heads. If you imagine thoughts as physical little objects, like little round thingamajiggies, and just imagine them all in a little nest. And all these thoughts are just in the nest, ready to spring here, there, and everywhere whenever the time is right. So now these thoughts are going to start springing into our heads. So who are these heads? It's going to happen kind of like in a fun little pattern simultaneously of like all these heads. So Dr. Ravi, Jim McCormack, Dr. Stephen Breary, some of the nurses that did not support Lucy, who betrayed her, I would say that word. All these heads are ready, and these thoughts are going to spring into them. So this makes me wonder whether he thought of the idea, because if he's so excited and happy about them springing in, perhaps it was a brainwave on his behalf, as far as he sees it, that the thoughts were like, oh, hooray, like we have these the thoughts now, they're springing. Could she be doing some, right, so our heads, could she be doing something deliberately? Right, my throat's hurting, but I'm going to just try and carry on answer this question. Complete this question. Could she be doing something deliberately? So he hasn't used any words like killing, harming, murdering, which that's a potential sign of deception, because that's what we're supposed to be talking about here. That's what they're supposed to be discussing in this interview. She'd just been, yeah, don't want to go into that. So he's not using any of those words. He's softening it to this and doing something deliberately. I love the word deliberate. It's a really strong sounding word. I love how that word sounds with the consonants and vowel, deliberate. And I think Dr. Ravi is really good at picking out these words that people can then use and run away with and just say like, yes, deliberate, you know, like he's sort of like, here you go, I've got a headline for you, deliberately, doing something deliberately. Could she be doing something deliberately? And now what a question to ask. Yes, Dr. Ravi Lucy Letby was definitely doing something deliberately. Now he didn't say, for example, what he's implying. So he didn't say, could she be hurting these babies and causing their deaths? He didn't say anything anywhere near that. Why not? Because several reasons. One of which, the subject of killing and murdering and deaths is very sensitive to him. Very sensitive to him. Doing something is what he's going to call it. And doing something deliberately is sensitive to him as well. So she could be doing something deliberately. Yes, so she's doing lots of things deliberately. For example, I imagine Lucy Letby was deliberately waking up at the right time in the morning, brushing her teeth, getting dressed, presenting herself smartly at work, signing in the correct way, communicating with colleagues, looking at the babies, visiting different babies, holding them in her arms, talking to parents, passing the baby to the mum who might be in a delicate state, all these kind of things she was doing very deliberately, making reports about what, state and what actions have been done for those babies. Very, very deliberate. And could she be doing something? Yes. So why is doing something, that's the word that he's chosen. So why is he sort of sensitive to the word doing something? One of the things I'm going to point out in this analysis is he had a problem with the fact that she was doing what he wasn't able to do, what he wasn't very good at doing. So her doing something is upsetting to him. And doing something is the job of looking after the babies. Okay, so theme of time. And now the reason I am interested in the theme of time is a personal theory I've come up with. Feel free to tear it apart and say whatever you think. Dr. Ravi Jairam, let's say in his childhood he was neglected, he wasn't given attention unless he performed in a certain way and achieved certain things. And he is sensitive to criticism and very defensive. So if something's said to him, then he would immediately just like fling it back, maybe. So someone who has experienced neglect has a very different relationship with time. And what's found in statement analysis is that, for example, neglectful parents make a lot of mentions of time. If there's a situation where their child has gone missing. So statement analysts are quite often to be found online analysing statements of missing children. And that's where you can see examples of them mentioning various things about time. That's because they're neglecting the children. So time is a theme. Okay, so he has some themes around time. How long he's been a paediatrician, how long he's been working in that career so far. Never, initially, and as time progressed and things started. And we have more later in the statement as well. Excuse me. So my theory that I've personally come up with is that he is a victim of neglect in his childhood, and then somebody who's experienced that has difficulty in giving proper care to others. So that could be a reason that he's not great at this job. And he found it, you could even use the word triggering, that Lucy was doing a good job and doing all the tasks for those babies that he wasn't really able to do. No examples of those poor babies who died. So in this, does he give any actual examples? This is a good question. What was it like when babies started dying and you couldn't understand why? Does he give any examples of those poor babies? Does he ever mention the babies? Excuse me. Focus on blame. So the question, what was it like? And his answer concludes with, who's to blame? So that's another possible symptom of experiencing neglect in childhood, because if you're in competition for attention from your parents or competition against your siblings to get any recognition from your parents and you're just not getting it, and there's a blame game going on, because if someone gets blamed, it's their fault that something's wrong and in the family, or someone's not feeling okay. So the worst thing is if it's your fault. And I have personal experience of this because, let's just leave it at that. what would I have said if I could imagine it? So, right, let's just imagine for a minute. I am, I'm not, I'm just like pretending. So let's just imagine that I am a paediatrician, I have a ward, and then one day a very premature baby dies, and I don't know why. Okay, what was it like? It was, let's think about this. It was awful. The baby was so tiny. He was not moving around as much as you would expect when a newborn arrives, and the parents were anxious. The tension in the ward was up on a level that I'd never seen it, and we all did overtime trying to make sure we gave all the attention to this little baby. And when the little baby passed away, I felt awful. I just felt like it might have been my fault and what could I have done differently, but I just couldn't think of anything that could have caused it, because I was hoping that this baby was going to make it. So it's a big shock. And within a few weeks, another baby died on our ward again. So it was really, my heart just felt the pain of these little ones who hadn't made it, and what the family of those little ones must be going through right now. And I felt very responsible, and I was also worried about our staff and whether they were coping okay with all this, because we didn't have enough staff to begin with, and I became very anxious that how we'd all manage to continue in our work to the proper level. So that's just a made-up example of like what I would say. So did he say anything like this? I mean, I'm not saying that's a realistic answer because I just made it up of my imagination. But like, he's talked about his career. He's talked about a feeling that's not actually a feeling. And then he's talked about the idea of blaming Lucy. Okay, let's just see if there's anything else in here. President, yeah, she's doing lots of things, right? And just notice where that's on its own on a page. So that's just because it's interesting to look at Paul Brand's reactions as well. He's very good at remaining impassive as he's listening. So I like to kind of be a detective watching his face as he's listening to these answers and think like which bits of this is he believing. So it's quite interesting. He had quite a piercing stare on that bit. Okay. Now we're at half an hour. I tell you what, I'll just pause here because I've got a sore throat, which I think is linked to my anger around analysing these things. So I'm going to pause there, but that's part one, and I'll continue with the next one when I've eased my throat a little bit. Thanks, everybody.